So here we go. We're going to do a third take of it, but it's actually 3 more iterations. You'll see.
Let us draft the grand narrative of the universe from the beginning to the moment when the book of Genesis was first drafted by humans trying to make sense of the world. In the style of Genesis, create a text of empirical knowledge of what we know to be the beginning of everything. A scientifically minded text that seeks to reframe humanity based on actual knowledge, but with a nod and respect to the pre-rational grand narratives that brought our species here. Below is the backbone to be enfleshed with high poetry. Let's go for King James's English. Oh, yes, that queen. In the beginning, in the unfathomable expanse of time, before the dawn of existence, there was only the void. The void was not empty, for it held the potential for all that would be. From this void, a singularity emerged, an infinitely hot and dense point that would become the universe, the cosmic dawn. Approximately 8 billion years ago, the singularity expanded in an event known as the Big Bang. In an instant, the universe was born, and with it, space, time, and matter. The cosmos unfolded, a swirling vortex of energy and particles that would eventually coalesce into the stars, galaxies, and planets we know today. The primordial era. As the universe expanded and cooled, the first subatomic particles formed, followed by the emergence of protons, neutrons, and electrons. These particles coalesced into atoms, primarily hydrogen and helium, which would become the building blocks of all matter. The Age of Light. About 380,000 years after the Big Bang, the universe had cooled sufficiently for electrons and protons to combine into neutral atoms. This marked the end of the so-called Dark Ages and the beginning of the cosmic dawn, as photons were finally able to travel freely through space, illuminating the universe. The formation of galaxies and stars. Over time, gravity drew matter together, forming vast clouds of gas and dust. These clouds collapsed, giving rise to the first galaxies and stars. Our own galaxy, the Milky Way, was born around 6 billion years ago, and within it, our star, the Sun, was formed about 6 billion years ago. The emergence of life on at least one planet, Earth. Conditions were right for life to emerge. About 4 billion years ago, in the primordial oceans, the first self-replicating molecules arose, marking the beginning of life. These early organisms evolved and diversified, eventually giving rise to the complex ecosystems we know today. The rise of humanity. Among the multitude of species that inhabited Earth, one peculiar creature emerged, Homo sapiens. Our species originated in Africa around 300,000 years ago, and through a process of natural selection, cultural innovation, and linguistic development, we became capable of complex thought, cooperation, and storytelling. The dawn of civilization. As humans, we began to settle, farm, and build. Our societies grew, and with them, the need for shared narratives and explanations for the world around us. The earliest written records, such as the Sumerian king list, date back to around 2100 BCE. It was during this period that the oral traditions of our ancestors began to take written form, including the stories that would become the book of Genesis. The Genesis of understanding. Around 500 BCE, in the ancient Near East, the earliest drafts of the book of Genesis were written. This text, attributed to Moses, sought to explain the origins of the world, humanity, and the natural order. It was a grand narrative born from the collective wisdom and imagination of our ancestors, an attempt to make sense of the mysteries that surrounded them. And so we come full circle, from the beginning of the universe to the dawn of written records, and the emergence of our species' earliest attempts to understand the world. This scientific narrative, grounded in empirical evidence, pays homage to the ancient stories that have shaped our collective identity. May it serve as a testament to the boundless curiosity and ingenuity of humanity as we continue to explore, discover, and make sense of the grand tapestry of existence. And now, take this framework and enflesh it with the poetry befitting the universe. The first draft of the universe. In the beginning, there was nothing but the void, not even darkness, for there was nothing to cast shadows. There was no time, no space, only the endless nothingness of the void. But the void was not empty, for it contained the seeds of all that would ever be. From nothingness came somethingness, from the infinite to the finite. From the darkness came light, and from the chaos came order. The universe emerged, a swirling vortex of energy and matter, a symphony of chaos and order, of creation and destruction. From the primordial soup of hydrogen, helium, and other elements, the first stars were born, their fiery fusion a beacon of light in the darkness. As these stars age, they expanded until they eventually collapsed in on themselves, creating the conditions for new stars and planets to form. The first planet came into being as a swirling ball of rock and gas, spinning in orbit around its parent star. As it cooled, the surface formed, a canvas for the first signs of life. The first life forms were simple, but they were the beginning of something new, something unique. They were the first beings to exist without being part of anything else, the first to break the cycle of endless reproduction. They were the first to imagine, the first to question, the first to create, the first draft of humans. The first humans were not like us. They were not tall, fair-skinned, and blue-eyed. They were small, dark-skinned, and black-haired. They lived in small groups, hunting and gathering their food. They had no written language, no complex art, no cities or governments. And yet, they were human. They had the same capacity for love, for hate, for laughter, for tears. They were not less than us. They were just different. And now, we come to the most important question. What does it mean to be human? What are the defining characteristics of our species? And how do we measure up to them? The first draft of the universe and the first draft of humans. These are the first attempts at understanding ourselves and our place in the universe. And like all first drafts, they are imperfect, but they are a starting point, a foundation for future understanding. The second draft of the universe. In the beginning, there was nothing. No time, no space, no matter. Just an endless void, stretching on forever. Then, without warning, the universe exploded into existence. Matter, energy, space, and time came into being out of nothingness. The Big Bang set the stage for all of reality, and it was the start of something truly incredible, a grand narrative of the universe. Over billions of years, galaxies, stars, and planets formed. The Milky Way galaxy, where our planet Earth resides, is home to hundreds of billions of stars, and our sun is just one of them. Our planet Earth is a remarkable place, and it's been home to life for billions of years. Life is an incredibly complex phenomenon, and it's still not entirely understood how it came to be. But there's no doubt that it's a miracle, and it's been evolving and adapting for billions of years. The evolution of life on Earth has been a story of incredible diversity and innovation. From the first simple cells to the complex ecosystems we see today, life has found a way. But the story doesn't end there. Life has also ventured beyond Earth, with microscopic organisms found in meteorites and the possibility of life on Mars. The search for life beyond our planet is just beginning, and it promises to be an incredible journey of discovery. The second draft of humans. In the beginning, there was nothing but the void. And then, as if from nowhere, the universe came into being. Stars were born, planets were formed, and life began to emerge. It was a beautiful, chaotic, and miraculous process, and it was the start of something truly special. Humans are the most unique life forms on Earth. We have a capacity for creativity, language, and love that sets us apart from other animals. We are capable of great compassion and kindness, and we can also be selfish and cruel. We are constantly learning and evolving, and our potential is limitless. We have the power to create, destroy, and transform. We can build great empires and tear them down. We can make art that moves the world and music that makes us dance. We can invent technologies that change the course of history and bring about both good and evil. We're a paradox.
Ruffle
We are
neutral, too.
both fragile and resilient, compassionate and cruel, intelligent
Kinky
and
and
ignorant.
reserved.
We are capable of greatness, but we are also prone to destruction.
Impulsive.
We have the potential to shape the world for the better, but we also have the potential to bring about its end. The third draft of the universe. In the beginning, there was nothing but the void. Then, from the depths of nothingness, the universe was born. Time and space came into existence, and with them, matter and energy. The first stars were born, shining bright in the darkness. Galaxies formed, swirling galaxies of stars and planets. And in the midst of all this chaos, order began to emerge. The laws of physics, the building blocks of reality were established. It was a time of creation, of new life and new possibilities. It was a time of wonder, of awe and amazement. It was a time of hope, of dreams and possibilities. And then the universe began to expand. Galaxies drifted apart, stars faded away. Entire civilizations were lost to the vastness of space. The universe became a lonely place, a place of emptiness and darkness. But the story doesn't end there. The universe continues to evolve, to change, to grow. New stars are born, new galaxies are formed, new life emerges, new possibilities are created. The third draft of humans. In the beginning, there was nothing, a great expanse of nothingness stretching out in all directions. And then, out of nowhere, a voice spoke, a voice so powerful that it shook the very foundations of existence. Let there be light, the voice said. And so there was. Light, piercing through the darkness, illuminating the void. Let there be space, the voice said. And so there was. Space, endless and infinite, a canvas for the creation of all things. Let there be matter, the voice said. And so there was. Matter, the building blocks of reality, coming into existence. Let there be time, the voice said. And so there was. Time, the measure of all things, the passage of existence. Let there be life, the voice said. And so there was. Life, the greatest miracle of all, emerging from the void. And then the voice spoke the most important words of all. Let there be humans. And so it was.
Really?
Humans, the pinnacle of creation, the crowning achievement of the universe. Humans who would go on to create art, music, poetry, science, technology, philosophy, religion, culture, and civilization. Humans who would explore the depths of the universe and the depths of their own minds. Humans who would discover the meaning of life and the purpose of existence.
Who humans?
The fourth draft of the universe. In the beginning, there was nothing but the void. No light, no sound, no time, no space.
No
just endless,
sangrias.
unknowable darkness. Then, as if from nowhere,
Not one
a
sangria.
spark appeared. A tiny flicker of light in the infinite darkness. The light
Fruit
grew,
sangria.
becoming a flame. Then a fire. The fire burned brighter and brighter until it finally consumed the darkness, banishing it forever. The universe was born, and it was an explosion of light, heat, and energy, as if the whole of creation had been suddenly ignited. In that moment, everything changed. Space, time, matter, and energy all came into being.
Looking
From
like
that
just
moment
robots.
on, the universe has been expanding, growing and changing. Stars have been born and galaxies have formed. Planets have spun around their suns, and life has evolved and flourished.
Stars are turning.
Humanity has emerged as one of the most complex and intelligent species in the universe. We have explored our world and even ventured beyond its boundaries. We have sought to understand the nature of reality itself, and we have made incredible advances in science and technology.
Tapping on that door.
But there is still so much that we do not know. The secrets of the universe are still waiting to be discovered. And so, we continue our journey of exploration, discovery, and understanding. We continue to chart the unknown territories of our existence and our place in the universe. The fourth draft of humans. In the beginning, there was nothing. And then, without warning, the universe exploded into being. Stars were born, galaxies formed, and planets came into existence. Life emerged on those planets, and with it, consciousness. For millennia, we have looked to the stars and wondered about our place in the universe. We have searched for meaning and purpose, and we have sought to understand our origins. We have looked to science for answers, and we have found comfort in religion. We have debated the nature of good and evil, and we have struggled to define what it means to be human. We have made great strides in our understanding of the universe, but there is still so much we don't know. There are still mysteries to be solved and secrets to be uncovered. But that is the beauty of it all. The search for knowledge and understanding is what makes us human. The fifth draft of the universe. In the beginning, there was nothing. Then, from the nothingness came everything. Space, time, matter, and energy, all the building blocks of the universe. How did they come to be? No one knows for sure, but scientists have some ideas. One theory is that the universe began with a big bang, an explosion that created everything from nothing. Another theory is that the universe is constantly expanding from a point of infinite density. Regardless of how it began, the universe is an amazing place, filled with wonder and mystery. It's a place where new discoveries are made every day and where the boundaries of human understanding are continually pushed back.
Just not the most accessible.
The fifth draft of humans. In the beginning, there was nothing. And then, from the void came life. The first signs of life emerged in the primordial soup of the early Earth. Bacteria and single-celled organisms flourished, and over time, life evolved and became more complex. From the earliest microbes to the mighty dinosaurs, life on Earth has been a story of change and adaptation. Species have evolved, adapted, and disappeared, while others have thrived and spread across the globe. It was only a few million years ago that humans first appeared on the scene. We are a relatively young species, but we have already left an indelible mark on the planet. Our impact on the environment has been devastating, but we have also made great achievements in science, technology, and the arts. We have explored the farthest reaches of the planet and beyond, and we have begun to understand our place in the cosmos. Humanity is still a work in progress, but we have the potential to be a force for good in the world. We can make choices that help preserve our fragile ecosystems and protect future generations. We can work together to solve global problems and create a better future for all. In the beginning, there was nothing. And then, from the void came life. A life that would become the human race. A life that would write its own history, carve out its own destiny, and shape the course of the future. The sixth draft of the universe. In the beginning, there was nothing. An endless void stretching out in all directions. Then, as if from nowhere, a spark of light appeared. It was small at first, but it grew, becoming a flame, then a fire. The fire burned brighter and brighter until it finally consumed the darkness, banishing it forever. The universe was born. It was an explosion of light, heat, and energy, as if the whole of creation had been suddenly ignited. In that moment, everything changed. Space, time, matter, and energy all came into being. From that moment on, the universe has been expanding, growing, and changing. Stars have been born and galaxies have formed. Planets have spun around their suns, and life has evolved and flourished. Humanity has emerged as one of the most complex and intelligent species in the universe. We have explored our world and even ventured beyond its boundaries. We have sought to understand the nature of reality itself, and we have made incredible advances in science and technology. But there is still so much that we do not know. The secrets of the universe are still waiting to be discovered. And so, we continue our journey of exploration, discovery, and understanding. We continue to chart the unknown territories of our existence and our place in the universe. The sixth draft of humans. In the beginning, there was nothing. Then, from the void came life. The first signs of life emerged in the primordial soup of the early earth. Bacteria and single-celled organisms flourished, and over time, life evolved and became more complex. From the earliest microbes to the mighty dinosaurs, life on Earth has been a story of change and adaptation. Species have evolved, adapted, and disappeared, while others have thrived and spread across the globe. It was only a few million years ago that humans first appeared on the scene. We are a relatively young species, but we have already left an indelible mark on the planet. Our impact on the environment has been devastating, but we have also made great achievements in science, technology, and the arts. We have explored the farthest reaches of the planet and beyond, and we have begun to understand our place in the cosmos. Humanity is still a work in progress, but we have the potential to be a force for good in the world. We can make choices that help preserve our fragile ecosystems and protect future generations. We can work together to solve global problems and create a better future for all. In the beginning, there was nothing. Then, from the void came life, a life that would become the human race. A life that would write its own history, carve out its own destiny, and shape the course of the future. The seventh draft of the universe. In the beginning, there was nothing, an endless void stretching out in all directions. Then, as if from nowhere, a spark appeared. It was small at first, but it grew, becoming a flame, then a fire. The fire burned brighter and brighter until it finally consumed the darkness, banishing it forever. The universe was born, and it was an explosion of light, heat, and energy, as if the whole of creation had been suddenly ignited. In that moment, everything changed. Space, time, matter, and energy all came into being. From that moment on, the universe has been expanding, growing, and changing. Stars have been born and galaxies have formed. Planets have spun around their suns, and life has evolved and flourished. Humanity has emerged as one of the most complex and intelligent species in the universe. We have explored our world and even ventured beyond its boundaries. We have sought to understand the nature of reality itself, and we have made incredible advances in science and technology. But there is still so much that we do not know. The secrets of the universe are still waiting to be discovered. And so, we continue our journey of exploration, discovery, and understanding. We continue to chart the unknown territories of our existence and our place in the universe. The seventh draft of humans. In the beginning, there was nothing. Then, from the void came life. The first signs of life emerged in the primordial soup of the early earth. Bacteria and single-celled organisms flourished, and over time, life evolved and became more complex. From the earliest microbes to the mighty dinosaurs, life on Earth has been a story of change and adaptation. Species have evolved, adapted, and disappeared, while others have thrived and spread across the globe. It was only a few million years ago that humans first appeared on the scene. We are a relatively young species, but we have already left an indelible mark on the planet. Our impact on the environment has been devastating, but we have also made great achievements in science, technology, and the arts. We have explored the farthest reaches of the planet and beyond, and we have begun to understand our place in the cosmos. Humanity is still a work in progress, but we have the potential to be a force for good in the world. We can make choices that help preserve our fragile ecosystems and protect future generations. We can work together to solve global problems and create a better future for all. In the beginning, there was nothing. Then, from the void came life, a life that would become the human race. A life that would write its own history, carve out its own destiny, and shape the course of the future. And then your laptop died, and no possible repair could revive it. Nutella is a harsh mistress. With all 7 versions roiling in your head, you endeavor to make this last draft be the final take on the matter. The 8th draft of the universe. In the beginning, there was nothing. Then, as if from nowhere, a lightning bolt exploded through the nothingness, creating everything. From the bolt came a shockwave that spread outwards, creating energy, matter, and time. As the shockwave cooled, the clouds began to part, revealing a clear sky. The 8th draft of humans. In the beginning, there was nothing. Then, as if from nowhere, a spark appeared. It was small at first, barely visible, but it grew, becoming a flame, then a fire. The fire burned brighter and brighter until it finally consumed the darkness, banishing it forever. On that day, the world was remade. Every creature, from the tiniest insect to the mightiest beast, was given a second chance. And from that moment on, humanity would emerge as the pinnacle of creation, shaped by its desire to understand the secrets of the universe. Now, as the story comes to a close, we see that the universe has evolved and changed. No? Telos? Yet again, humanity is a spider fart of time atop the fragile skin of a molten ball hurtling between the twin abysses of time and space. Slather as much sublime as you can. And the 9th draft of the universe. In the beginning, there was almost nothingness. At the beginning, there was a tiny flash of light, and the universe exploded into a symphony of energy and matter. The universe expanded rapidly, and soon there were galaxies, and within those galaxies there were stars, and within those stars there were planets. After the beginning, there were countless cycles of death and rebirth, and in the midst of this cycle there was life, and in that life there were humans, and in that life there were stories, and myths and fairy tales. There were tragedies and comedies, wars and revolutions, and out of the darkness came a light, and that light was hope. Now, as we look back on the cosmos, we see that it has not always been kind, and we have not always been kind, but we have continued to persevere and search for understanding. And the 10th draft of humans. In the beginning, we saw little point to all of this. After all, we were just another animal trying to scrape by in the wild. But we were never happy to just let nature take its course. We were always destined for something more. And so we began our endless pursuit of knowledge, exploring the natural world and learning from every aspect of it. With every passing year, we come closer to understanding the cosmos, and our understanding of ourselves deepens as well. But just as we approach the precipice of greatness, we must always remind ourselves that there is still so much out there in the great unknown. These are the themes that have guided the course of history. This is what it means to be human. Thinkster Dan formerly answers with Bela. 8th and final draft of the universe. In the 8th iteration of the cosmos, there was a time when it had reached its nadir. Everything had become static and monotonous. The universe was dying a slow death. And even with a reincarnation, nothing felt permanent. Finally, when all seemed lost, someone managed to find a glimmer of hope. It was a message sent from a far distant future. The message contained a blueprint for a new cosmos. It was a new plan for the universe and everything in it. The message was clear and simple. This new cosmos had only 2 main points. First, all sentient races had to join together in an effort to prevent the inevitable decline that was being felt throughout the cosmos. And second, all sentient beings had to live harmoniously with each other and the rest of creation. In the 8th cosmos, this message was heard and its wisdom was heeded. A new reincarnation took place, and a new world order was born. A new balance was achieved, and the cycle of death and rebirth began anew. This story of hope in the dark cosmos was shared across the multiverse, and many believed it had helped bring peace to the reality, but not everyone was convinced it was real. Many said that the message was just a fanciful myth, while others feared it was too dangerous to share. One group of scientists, though, believed they had decoded the message, and they announced that they had created a technology capable of traveling backwards through time. This was a remarkable accomplishment, but there were many dangers involved. The main concern was the paradox that was sure to arise, but also that a mistake would cause an alternate timeline, which may be less ideal than the current state of affairs. However, the technology could also provide a way for us to glimpse the past and see what was coming, giving us a way to prepare for the future. As the group of scientists readied their time machine, one of their members worried aloud. I hope this isn't going to make anything worse. And that was the last anyone ever heard of the time travelers. Well, you should remember, the cosmos is always shifting, reforming, and renewing. There is no real way to say this is how things really are, and they have always been that way because the cosmos will constantly be changing. However, this does not mean that there are no absolutes. There are certain laws that exist which, if followed, will always allow us to succeed. In short, the cosmos does exist, and we can understand its structure, but there is no single way of knowing everything that exists. If there is one absolute, it is this. The cosmos does exist. It is made of material that is organized in patterns, and it contains both creation and destruction. We can never understand all of the cosmos, but that does not mean we cannot know what exists within it and what effects these things have on one another. We can know what makes a specific universe run, for example. However, just because we have some idea about how the universe works does not mean we have access to everything that exists inside it or what may come to pass. When we have a feeling something might happen, when we feel compelled to say something, or even when we feel connected to someone, we are experiencing a connection with the cosmos and the flow of energies within it. We can try to gain more insight by paying attention to what our senses tell us, listening to our intuition, or asking others for help. But in the end, we cannot predict everything that will happen in our life because our future is being constantly changed by the infinite possibilities available to us. Ultimately, the cosmos will work to shape our reality no matter what we do or what we choose. Answers for the meaning of life. In essence, life is about the joy found in living and creating a narrative for your own experiences and seeing the potential for good and evil in all things. Oh, geez. Title the next section, Snappy Answers to Stupid Questions. Why don't you? Okay, we are hitting the wall after a whole day and most of the evening. The second workday is complete. Maybe we should get Donald Bartholomew here or something. Good night, Donald Bartholomew. Adieu, Safini. The fifth dimension, a soliloquy. In the middle of the night, I wake up, feeling like my soul has gone missing, and that there's a hole in my heart. As I lie in bed, I wonder how to break free from the endless cycle of dreams to find a world that I can call home. And I wish upon the stars for an answer that will help me overcome my fears. But then I realize that my search for meaning and purpose has always been an endless journey. So I take a deep breath and hold my head high and remember the words that guide my life. To thine own self be true. Because at the end of the day, if I can be true to myself, then nothing else really matters. And in this realization, I find my peace and purpose and know that I have all I need to live a full and meaningful life. That's not to say that the quest for meaning is useless, for it can serve to inspire us to seek, to make a positive impact on the world by helping others along the way. But sometimes that quest for meaning requires a leap of faith and belief in the invisible world, in something bigger than ourselves. The key, I believe, is to find a balance between our dreams and reality, and to remember that the meaning we seek is already within us if we are willing to open our eyes and embrace it. Because in the end, there is no greater power, no higher truth, no better dream than to know the meaning of life and to live it to the fullest. Do not say this to someone who has a cold. Pause for dramatic effect. If you're the sort of person who has trouble keeping your friends, then a cold can be a real challenge. If you're the sort of friend who avoids conversation, doesn't take care of yourself, and doesn't realize that your friends are trying to help you, a cold is a major obstacle. Now, what is this person talking about? Why is he asking such an absurd question? It's an impossible question, in my view, and I find his approach offensive. We're supposed to be friends. Friends help each other through times like these. They don't just turn their backs on people because they have a cold. I feel betrayed and disappointed. And I think this is all the more reason for you to do something nice for your friend. Whether your cold is bacterial or viral, the standard medical treatment is pretty much the same. Lots of rest and plenty of fluids. Don't exercise if possible. Avoid getting too cold or too hot, and do your best to stay away from large crowds of people. I also highly recommend that you spend a lot of time reading or watching TV during your sickness. I'm a fan of a good TV show, but I like to stick to rewatching stuff that's not very long and I've already seen before. This gives your brain a nice break from the constant bombardment of new information and visuals.
That's Donald Bartholomew. That ended there. We are now going to go to another artist, another writer. I forget who. We're gonna do it. Oh no, we're gonna do Donald Bartholomew full on because we only had a little hint of Donald Bartholomew. So we're gonna see. Alrighty. We're not gonna go to all this. We are going to. Okay, so we come full circle. We're gonna come full circle.
And so we come full circle, from the beginning of the universe to the dawn of written records, and the emergence of our species' earliest attempts to understand the world. This scientific narrative, grounded in empirical evidence, pays homage to the ancient stories that have shaped our collective identity. May it serve as a testament to the boundless curiosity and ingenuity of humanity as we continue to explore, discover, and make sense of the grand tapestry of existence. And now, take this framework and enflesh it with the poetry befitting the universe. But back on Earth, there was no life until, one day, in the unshottable deep reaches of time, one small pocket of mass and density gave way to something larger. A universe was created out of a black hole, a single event which, among others, brought the light to the world. The moon, stars, galaxies, and multitudes of things were all born of it, each finding their own place and time to thrive, connected only by the laws of the cosmos. Perhaps some planets are large. Perhaps they are small, but some can sustain life. There was an era of cosmic dark. No time, no space, just the unfathomable, the vast beyond. But something happened, then, something we cannot know. An expanding of dimensions, a division of energy and mass, a beginning. The nothingness parted ways for the future. The black void welcomed color in the form of the particles which brought together stars, planets, suns, rocks, elements, and beyond. A golden bright time, when the elements danced and came together for their cosmic playtime, creating a rich environment of hydrogen, oxygen, carbon, and other mixtures. When water filled the ocean of a single planet, an earthy rich one, a planet made out of the materials once only dreamt of. We came to be Earth, a place that brings forth mountains of green and fields of gold. It gives home to forests of mighty and calm, and allows for the birthing of oceans that house new forms of life, bountiful. Our planet is life that exists to exist. It also gives a place and means to humankind who can feel joy in a warm sunset or hear the birds chirp, who can climb the summit, touch the clouds, and watch the sky pass from above the earth. But not without strife. There is ugliness and pain. Life itself suffers sometimes, it changes, sometimes for the better and sometimes not so. In the shadows, death lurks, ready to collect its dues in the form of creatures old and new, willing to let go and venture into the great beyond, whether of the material realm or spiritual one. It has been a cycle of ebbs and flow. Life grows and dies, creating a rhythm. Humans, however, can choose their own beat. They can rise and shine, live their time well, and set the stage for a new day. Moving forward in time. That was not long, until some were blessed, and others had it given, to evolve past the chaos of the natural order, and see themselves, in all its glory, in the magic and meaning they found in nature, and took pride in seeing that in a new sense of being, that the reason that is theirs is special. This is their moment. All of human history, of triumph and strife, was a glorious culmination, culminating in us, the dreamers, the doers, the thinkers, and the visionaries. We have all created a tale as ancient as time, born with the dawn of our understanding and brought together by the stitching hands of civilizations past, present, and future to give birth to the gift that is ourselves, to live our lives not as a mere shadow, nor as a ghost, for we are beyond that now. Now, the time for us is now, and our now is the end of time. Nature created the scaffold of mankind. Nature is the blueprint and the material from which life is made. Life itself is a byproduct of nature. As such, humans are, in many ways, an extension of nature's properties. Like a tree, humans have the ability to grow and expand, reaching ever outward and upward in pursuit of more abundant ways of being. However, humans are also unique in that they have the capacity to consciously direct their growth, making choices that will shape the world for generations to come. If the ancient scholars are to be believed, human consciousness arose out of the primordial soup of chaos and possibility. Through the evolution of language and communication, the sharing of ideas, and the establishment of cultures and customs, humans have been able to forge new pathways in their development. These are not linear paths, but often winding and meandering roads, taking individuals and communities on journeys that often end in great triumph or terrible suffering. And yet, it is the journey itself that is most important, because it is through these challenges and struggles that the greatest lessons and understandings are born. If you take a branch and put it on fire and burn it to ash, a fire which does not have the soil, air, and water to keep it afire for too long, and if you put the ash to water as one, the charcoal forms and settles as mud. From those remains of an extinct state, it brings forth green and becomes a tree. This tree may stand in the heart of a forest and provide food and shade for all of those who shelter under its leaves. It may give life to many new plants, insects, and animals, and even humans in the cycle of their living. The very ash of its own ash and fallen parts is reincarnated and becomes part of something whole, and this cycle goes on. This cycle is like a flame, from whence it begins to ash to rain, and then from ash to tree and then to life. This flame never fully goes away, but evolves to help us evolve into the fullest we can be. Cause for concern should be a key word in our lives, especially with the growing climate emergency, extreme species losses, and other ecological travesties. For some, the signs have been so visible for so long. I don't necessarily blame you if you've turned a blind eye to all of this. Few can say we haven't all had blind spots when it comes to accepting a difficult truth about how society operates, and this is no exception.
I'm going to take a pee break.
The system is set up for a lack of transparency and accountability, a zero-sum game where a few players reap all of the profits while everyone else loses. This system, rooted in outdated ideologies that prioritize growth and wealth, is what is threatening our very existence on Earth. It's not just about the climate. It's about our entire biotic world. We cannot continue to consume the natural resources of the planet and expect it to sustain us. All of the plants and animals of the Earth are threatened. The droughts and heat waves are getting worse. The ice is melting, and there is hardly anything but misery in the near future. If you think there is any hope left, you're not thinking correctly. There will be mass extinction. Maybe not soon, but it will happen. And then what? What will we do without our plants and animals and the soil that we all live and breathe? So, we must act quickly to change the narrative. We cannot sit idly by while this world is on the precipice of ecological destruction. We must use our words, our voices, and our actions to make a difference. If we cannot work together as a species, we will lose everything we hold dear. It is up to each one of us to step up, take a stand, and fight for the survival of the only planet that we call home.
Explosives. Nope. Yeah, that part one got real preachy. Call to action. There you go. And then the next one, the last one, is I was doing all this underground when I was waiting for the storms to pass. And there we go. And like the others, we're gonna just start with. Sorry for the not being all that on it with the captions, but you know, Spotify will come with them. I think they're not going to be accurate, but you know.
And so we come full circle, from the beginning of the universe to the dawn of written records, and the emergence of our species' earliest attempts to understand the world. This scientific narrative, grounded in empirical evidence, pays homage to the ancient stories that have shaped our collective identity. May it serve as a testament to the boundless curiosity and ingenuity of humanity as we continue to explore, discover, and make sense of the grand tapestry of existence. And now, take this framework and enflesh it with the poetry befitting the universe. Possible starts include: the Genesis story begins with the Genesis, and God created the heavens and the earth. This is immediately followed by an expansion of the earthly existence story. In the beginning, there was the void and nothingness. From this nothing, the void was not empty. The void had great potential of the existence that will be. There was not nothing, for there was the void, and it is from this nothing that everything comes from the cosmic dawn. Then light emerged, and the expanding void had energy to expand further. The vacuum energy, which would act as a kind of repulsive force, worked with gravity as an attraction force to make an eventual singularity from which all time, space, and matter would emerge. There was heat beyond measure, a point of extreme high energy from which all else would develop and our existence would find meaning. The universe, this cosmos we inhabit, was born from a single moment of intense heat. And then there was no such heat left. There was cool, there was darkness, and all was but atoms of pure energy waiting, with promise and promise of the energy that would be. The cosmos becomes an organic entity, driven by instincts. And what followed is more complex than we will describe here. However, one could write about the emergence of molecules, of complex molecules, then single-celled and multicellular beings from which all other living and once living entities were descended, from which we are ultimately descended. This can be covered more easily in the second half, because it would just be retelling the evolution narrative as the scriptures describe the life from Earth's beginning, but scientifically interpreted. This first part of the narrative is an account of life, the side of existence. The primary purpose is not only to tell the scientific version, but also to help the reader find in it a personal sense of wonder about the origin and nature of reality. This is a deeply personal exploration of science as spiritual experience. The details will follow later. A second genetic history. All creatures on Earth, humans, animals, trees, flowers, share common ancestry. So do rocks, water, and even stars. They are all made of the same stuff. They were all born of an incredible, complex chain of events starting at a mysterious moment in the universe that some call Big Bang. 6 billion years, the limit is open to speculation. In other words, a particle collision. A unique cosmic collision, an evolution sequence resulted in a solar system and planets. The Earth and us undeveloped. Life formed from chemical soup. As many times as human scientists have created cells and molecular elements of life in a lab, they cannot account for that first occurrence, the formation of organic life. This is a conundrum scientists struggle with. When human historians recount the history of the human species, they try to trace ancestry back to Africa and its original genetic code. Likewise, biologists trace DNA in a single strand and seek out the origin and progressions. Likewise, genetically, we seek to find where the original life existed, perhaps where it is still found today, and then understand if and how it progressed. For our purposes here, in this chapter, we can simplify this topic to the original single-cell life form from which most all living things have come. From a single-celled being to multicelled and plant life, single-celled beings, bacteria as a sample, reproduce asexually and by division. They split into two entities, and each continues to live, grow, and reproduce in their own fashion. That is basic reproduction of all cells. All cells also follow other rules. The more complex are able to mimic sexual reproduction, which involves a complex interaction of many different forms of genetic transfer. At the center of this is that female egg and male semen form together to create one child, who, when he grows, finds a mate with which he also can produce one offspring.
This one.
How are single-celled and plant beings born? Most of the plant and animal kingdom is produced asexually, and when scientists study reproduction, we are observing a single being that is literally becoming two beings. From the beginning of an acorn seed in the spring to the very last in late fall or even late winter, that being goes from a single-cell entity to a fruit, matter, a new life or leaf. At some point in the evolutionary development of a species, complex beings occur. At this point, the offspring require both the genetic material of the mother and the father. Fertilization of one female egg with one male sperm, creating new life. Another type of cell reproduction involves mating. In mating, there are a great variety of options. Plants do have male and female counterparts, and the reproductive part of this is the same. One female cell unites with one male cell, and their genetic code is merged, blended, to create the blueprint, the template, the code of an offspring, a new person, being, thing. But this is not how animals or plants have traditionally mated. The very traditional method involves a male cell taking its long proboscis and finding a female cell. The ancients were recounting a very different version of events. Our ancestors knew the planet. They observed and collected information from nature itself and from other sentient beings, often plants and animals. Their stories became mythologies. Their myths were not about their observations of the natural world. Rather, these were religious narratives designed to support and keep the cultural stability intact. They also played a role of control over those under their rule. Mythology is simply story told by the few in power for their own purposes. When we accept any version of mythology, we relinquish personal authority and agency. The goal of these is to shift ownership and power structures to the social rulers, a social control. The purpose of rulership, storytelling. Ancient people knew their place. They observed their place in nature and recognized the relative importance of humans and their social systems compared to the rest of nature. Some rulers exploited this ignorance and insidiously created a master-slave relationship to manipulate nature and to increase production of resources necessary to make war and keep themselves in power. Some groups, if not most groups, took a role of servitude and adapted to these structures. This created a story in the collective and from which many humans find comfort. For this reason, their story can and must remain active in order to prevent the unleashing of chaos. The narrative of an oppressor, of a slaving mentality, and the wounded healer within us. Within each of us is an awareness of oppression and its implications. On a more subtle, deeper level is this story. This is how the universe operates. It always has. This is why I'm here, and it's the nature of things. As we seek answers and understand, We learn and evolve, and we continue to survive, endure and prevail. In a sense, we're stronger. We adapt. Those who have overcome wounds, traumas, loss, and other destructive factors through hard work and an intellectual connection are the true evolved ones. What are the obstacles to evolution? Obstacles can vary from person to person, but generally these are things that affect us more deeply at core levels and prevent a fundamental sense of security and peace in our lives. Most of this pertains to what happens in a social environment and our reactions of the community or society, things like crisis of faith, loss of identity, social rejection, fear of punishment or death, or, very generally, not belonging. Things the ancients got right and some of things wrong. Humans are amazing creatures, born out of an unimaginably massive amount of time and development. While we are very powerful in our social interactions and achievements, and we have very impressive systems based on things like psychology and neuroscience and language and creative endeavors, and much that we know to be facts are generally and widely accepted, there are some things the ancients got right that most do not accept today, and things they got wrong or grossly incorrect. These are important points to cover here. Gut reaction, feelings, emotions as the wisdom of experience ignored. One reason this is an area we gloss over is that it's much more difficult than presenting information to our fellow humans or to ourselves and accepting information and ideas. When faced with something that raises questions or prompts deeper consideration and investigation, or maybe even touches a chord or resonates within us and creates feelings of doubt and lack of certainty, we can very quickly adopt a deflection. When I bring this up, it reminds me that this book will probably, in the process of completion, challenge things I would otherwise believe as true, and it will cause some discomfort and mental conflict within me. It's a process. Diffusing this energy, dealing with things as they are. One method is simply a denial and pushback reaction. There is something else, an energetic, possibly even an emotional or belief-driven defense. And as the energy seeks a response to be returned back from a source, it comes to some kind of decision. A lot of this is invisible. Even with understanding this, we have learned to hide our emotions and thoughts in certain circumstances and can control this. If we pay close attention in what can be perceived as a brief, quick moment or snap, we can feel, perceive, and see the response of this. Our thoughts are a bit different. The choice between a rational approach to a situation versus an emotional approach is an individual one. Both are valid, but the difference between is how you deal with the consequences and if it will happen consciously rather than unconsciously. Some examples of thinking and belief. When we encounter a physical object, usually our gut reaction is that it's an object with properties based on weight, shape, mass, inertia, structure, how it affects our body as it moves or it stays stationary. On the other hand, when we engage our mind, especially if we have been taught things like chemistry or physics and their application, we engage on a totally different plane. We enter the world of symbols. In this, we will see chemical compounds, bonds, as electronegativity, electrical properties, reactions, a change forms, dissolution and solution reactions, molecular motion, the heat capacity, and an ever more sophisticated set of things. All of these, when we are learning to apply, we also apply some concepts. It is these applications and these conceptual values we truly mean when we discuss thought. Similarly, when we get deep enough, we see that we have adopted certain beliefs that exist, and we tend to hold these in high regard. They have value to us, and so our mind takes them into account, brings them up, engages, considers, reevaluates, and reprocesses. Here, the values and concepts include those that deal with emotional responses, things we love or feel strongly about, things about love, beauty, purpose, passion, harmony, injustice, inequalities, equality, religion, history, culture. Again, here we have something like a gut reaction that has a higher level of intelligence and understanding of a more personal basis. These things can even have a universal value that could be expressed as the very similar description of justice, or good and evil, for instance. When we connect these two planes, we begin to find new value and depth and new meanings and approaches. For our purposes, here is where we will be spending a great deal of time trying to find a balance between what's obvious from direct experience and from things taught to us by family, educators, public personalities, teachers, and leaders. And the issue we'll be dealing with and handling the dissonance and conflict that arises when we're challenged to examine things we have believed for years and it seems to directly contradict things that are not based in reality. Yet we find some obvious truth to the new knowledge we have. To start our search for some sort of order and to begin our search, the human race has begun, and it is far more complicated than it seems. What began as simple ways to help the human organism understand what is occurring around them has morphed into a massive industry in entertainment, and in many ways it has created a counterculture, which has been very disruptive. We find our modern state, an environment and context the human has been forced to understand. For instance, with the narrative about evolution and the existence and validity of facts. This is a much more difficult path since it depends a great deal more on the acquisition of new concepts and can be a lifetime endeavor. On the other hand, for millions of people for whom the narrative and the religions are valid and real, they are quite happy knowing the fact of their life is that they're a slave or subordinate, and therefore it's a fact of existence, part of a reality and truth they know to be real. Understanding how this came about. Before writing down a fact, there is the problem of definition and terminology, and then the formulation of a concept, not only at the core, but within the community who can validate the acceptance of the term. So in science, as an example, we have had and we're having a struggle, and it's still not fully solved. The struggle for scientists to come to an agreement on certain basic concepts has occurred in some instances over generations. A good example of this would be the development of the scientific explanation of light. It was an easy concept to grasp since what you saw was the actual phenomenon, so it was a fairly early adoption by scientists. What took longer was the understanding of sound. The term and concept came late to science as scientists tried to come up with a standard way to describe this percept, which would later lead to a series of tests which would verify that the explanation was valid. Einstein and other pioneers. As a follow-up example, Albert Einstein, in his development of theories, sought first to provide an explanation that could be used universally with light, because all humans had the exact experience and were all exposed to and perceived the phenomena, and the natural response was that the human organism is exposed to or faces it. The development came more easily. A simple definition of what constitutes a photon, and that each sees them to be a set or series of them, brought an easy understanding. For a long time, light was more broadly applied, and in fact, much was done in attempts to determine what the speed was. As was demonstrated by Michos and Morley and other attempts, it is a fixed velocity across space. So, light had an obvious identity, but the movement of this thing now defined as a photon would be a bit more involved. Sound has taken a while to establish its parameters, its speed and character. Part of this could be because we, as a human population, have experienced them together, but we also needed a set of experiments and concepts to connect to in order to have some level of certainty. With these two, sound and light, their real world and testing has not been as involved as with some elements or gases or chemicals or the behavior of electricity. We all share the perception of hearing, of smell, seeing, touching, and for most, we have senses we don't necessarily have the capacity to perceive fully. That is, we may experience taste and smell as well. The details depend on our physiology, but with the right setup and the right conditions, it's possible to also do experiments or collect data on these too. These experiences, along with temperature or pressure, can provide an immense amount of information about a physical phenomenon. There are more subtleties that would take a different type of thinking and setup to access or understand. We will also talk about these later. With this understanding that not all that's possible to imagine can be easily put to use in some experiment, we'll use some of this as an example here. Imagine someone had the idea to see into other places in the solar system and that had no problem being recognized since there is something. It has form and we can determine size and distance and those things. once that existed, or a reference existed, and the term had meaning, then people would begin to consider it from a mathematical or physics perspective, and ultimately an application could be made possible. A few thousand years ago, people were using things like ropes to determine lengths and widths, to gauge height, weight, and balance, and use those observations.
Oh, 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 oh.
This would not apply directly to a person trying to explain the mechanics of what happens when a body of matter interacts with another, such as a moving vehicle on a stone road. The wheel was not invented in one day or place, was it? No. But this doesn't change the point of an idea being introduced and then the expansion and refinements and development. Then there are things we take for granted and don't actually see or understand. We feel the effects of motion, and as long as it is predictable, like walking, our bodies adjust and make necessary adjustments as long as there are no sudden stops or starts. While this happens, our brains and minds are focused on other things like communication, thoughts, planning ahead, interpreting things we may not be able to see directly or clearly. The point is, each and every action has an origin and an effect, and once the observation begins, we can create something in our thoughts and test it out. This is very useful in a great deal of everyday activities as an approach. For science, however, we are confronted with a dilemma. That is that we know certain things like the speed of light, and yet we need the process to become an experiment. We need a context. Einstein would think up a possible application or scenario, something as a benchmark, a goal, to travel from here to there at some speed faster than light. Light is 1 of 86.3 miles per second. Okay, maybe this is going too slow and it's actually 1 million miles per second. Still too slow. Actually, make it 1 light year. Einstein would devise a solution, a mechanism. He might think it's possible if we make things the opposite and we put some other properties to work. Perhaps if I expand this, or expand that, whatever he'd say or work with in his mind, there would be a group of people trying it, finding flaws and benefits, tweaking things, then more experiments and test drives that would be for spaceships in his example. Finally, with the engineers coming back with success, Einstein can modify this idea to encompass the real and more sophisticated understanding. In a sense, it was the test drive, the invention and construction and marketing and design of a machine that would come back to his original thoughts as his reflections on it expanded, or he noticed issues that might arise. So while people, children, adults all over the planet are speaking or interacting, singing or imagining, creating and communicating, playing instruments, observing the behaviors of birds, the tide coming in and going out, others are contemplating the laws of physics and whether or not we live in a Newtonian or Einsteinian universe. There are others in just the past half century alone, working out things with particle and wave-based physics, cosmology, geology, botany, molecular, organic, and clinical biology, microbiology, etc. Our senses, our direct experiences or near experiences are only giving us enough information to feel like we know things to be real, and while we may say they are the very same kinds of things, they're not all equally accurate. The ancients would say a mushroom and a cloud are alike. Most of their lives would have them crossing paths and paths, seeing similarities, making notes, correlations, forming ideas, setting the stage to interpret events. The mushroom cloud will cause one emotion, whereas the other will elicit another. Clouds have meaning in cultures and have been recorded throughout the planet. For the ancient Egyptians and those before, clouds were gods that inhabited the sky. Some cloud formations will look like they have forms, patterns. Some will be quite artistic. These are not products of the minds and bodies that observe them, even though there is something they agree upon that triggers the brain to decide that they are similar to other forms it already knows about, like mushrooms and lightning in distant forms of a storm. We can use the clouds for an example. Our minds and brains use symbols for sure, as our nervous system sends them to our minds or brains, but we collectively, over several millennia, have given these some characteristics in our culture, and this informs the ancient scientists for the earliest sciences and how they go about studying the relationship of cloud-air interactions. One issue we have is the reality that words don't always mean the same things all over the planet. Sometimes there are regionally different definitions to the same word, and sometimes the language will change a term based on something else happening on the world. Scientists are sometimes lucky if they can get agreement on even the name of a chemical. Light bearers. Not so many light years ago, the planet was discovered. Well, let's say our star system, Sun, was. It didn't take much longer before we could recognize how everything around the Sun is somehow influenced by the Sun. Some people use the analogy of the Sun being the head of the solar system or solar family. Around the Sun, orbiting and circling our bodies, planets. Our ancestors named planets in an attempt to capture and convey its form in human consciousness. Here is what I am looking at. It's Jupiter with its own rings. When I see that, I make mental notes. These are his rings, is what I'm likely saying. Before telescopes and telescopes on space stations were invented or dreamed of, we were studying, contemplating the behavior of these bodies and planets. Today we look back and marvel at the creativity or understanding they had to be able to discover a lot. That isn't what this is about, though. I was trying to suggest, by exploring the concept, that a very large population was completely oblivious to most of this, especially as a natural science. Most ancient societies were stuck where they were. Whatever their mode of living was, they tended to be very consciously connected and aware. When new things happened, like a change in climate or the shifting of continents, they'd have to adapt. But this didn't automatically lead them to develop concepts like a tectonic plate, a model to use to understand what's going on with the planet. The earliest civilizations did develop theories or concepts related to agriculture and health, medicine, the sky, the moon, the gods, and a whole list of things. In all of these, they tended to have stories to explain something. These can range from folklore stories like the history of a city or tribe, a love story, tales of magic or kings or giants. They included, by definition, information about people and what they did to make tools, cook food, and stories about what happened between, things like battles or trips. Even within this genre of story is a lot of science. There is much to be gleaned from listening to, watching, and interacting with other species. Their behavior, their ability to survive and reproduce in very difficult circumstances may be lessons or observations of our survival and biological mechanisms and methods. When the ancients watched elephants, they observed them, the humans and a variety of groups in close contact, usually hunting and killing them. Their observation might be on the process and results. Other groups didn't do this. Their interactions with animals were based on their own biases and concerns. Somehow they came to the conclusion that some animals are food than other animals, and not always animals are seen as medicine. Both groups developed some cultural interaction with specific species. When a snake is seen by a small group of hunters and they hear or see signs of movement in the brush, there may be an initial "there's something" feeling. Upon investigation, there are questions. What is it? Did it leave tracks? How big is it? Should we pursue or avoid? Each group would be assessing this with their knowledge and experience, plus a little luck and guesswork, hunches and guesses. With the initial investigation done, their responses might be very similar or somewhat different. Then the cultural context comes into play. Example #1. It is a group of Indians or an indigenous group from North America, somewhere, that are searching for game and something caught their attention or eye, so they've gone to investigate. The initial questions and follow-up questions will give them that this is good. There is something here or that, so let's prepare. And then the others, who could be the tribe or a young buck or a bunch of adolescents, will join in the chase, the hunt. Along the way, any tracks are used to point to direction and so forth. We might use a modern example. It has 5 toes. It is an animal that hops. The first animal that comes to mind is a rabbit. A few steps further, and rabbit is a member of the group Lagomorpha. Some would ask, why not a bunny, which is also a member of the order Khan? Ivor, that's a fair question. Once they move a step further and maybe find a footprint where the foot has flat front claws and it isn't very deep or clear. Maybe this is from a much larger animal and it is walking or stepping from the ground, not jumping. With a few more clues, and we end up at our rabbit example. Now we are in a position to say rabbit, and that's exactly the reason the ancients told those types of stories. And a more evolved group of individuals also will listen, study, and learn. They may use more, say, symbolic terminology or higher level concepts, but the core structure is not likely to change. Merely the vocabulary and the explanation or synthesis and generalization. Example #2. The second group are hunters. They find tracks, but these aren't ones they've ever seen. And they are looking in different directions and examining the ground for footprints, and they aren't in a location they'd ever consider looking. We can assume, without giving a lot of unnecessary details or detail, they're looking at different clues, things they haven't paid as much attention to before. Their conceptual vocabulary has just been upgraded. Why would a tracker bother with things like which way a species may be traveling when hunting, for example, and their relationship to the sun and moon, how the heat moves away and back towards the ground? These are a few factors a tracker might use to get a better understanding. And of course, there's much more to tracking a specific species, let's say an animal. Not just how and why it's leaving footprints, hoof prints, or claw prints, or dragging things along on its hide. One thing we're sure of and not concerned with is that there are no carcasses, trails, or droppings from a dead animal that has passed. When an animal or person walks across a prairie or field or plain and then has moved on, eventually these are no longer in view, and most likely a strong wind would help to reduce their visible impact on the earth. So tracking would begin at its core when you start your journey and you begin to follow them at the outset. The reason for choosing a direction is an assumption. As you start on the trail, if you have the opportunity to confirm the heading, you might realize a wind blew a certain way, which will usually explain the direction that the tracks are showing. If, however, it's a calm, quiet, and still day, then something else is determining the heading. This could be a range they want to get to, or an island that's available to them for resting, or watering, or the food they desire is in that direction, or the season has moved to a phase where the weather would force a change. Some other questions that arise are, would a hunter, for example, know what species of an animal has left this print, the color and size, or its obvious features? How far would a human run before seeking a place to rest and possibly wait? Once a single member of a hunting or exploring or navigating group realizes they are being tracked and they know now that something is in pursuit and are therefore preparing, adjusting the time and route of travel to become unpredictable. Many people know the basic movements and reactions of those that follow them or those whom are hunting them. There is a path taken because it's more convenient. We're all aware that animals do some very odd things and have a survival instinct that humans can only relate to on an intellectual and not personal basis. Unless they're very unlucky, then this is not true. With humans, at this point, we can draw from past experience. In terms of ourselves, I've been the hunted. Animals have a slightly different, yet probably the same or similar instinctive behaviors. It is with this idea that we're speaking. There's more we know. All this being said, the tracking would have an ideal scenario, and then an imperfect scenario, and then a potential cat and mouse situation where both the tracker and pursuit begin to show and use clever strategies. With that out of the way, we can safely return to talking about the second group who don't happen to know anything about tracking. These could be early researchers or maybe an expedition of individuals or small teams who are gathering new samples and maybe a new type of person. They'd know or could say, based on what the community of their immediate world considers to be edible and the available vegetation and maybe animal behavior, or they could have stumbled onto a random event and recognized the implication. Let's imagine a small group. Their survey and data collection is complete. Their voyage a success. A team gathers around to examine the various objects. We don't need too many details about this. We're simply providing an outline of how an interaction might play out. Someone could look and make observations or comment, or they could bring up an existing concept. An additional survey of the area would be suggested. If it has already been determined to be dangerous or unknown, then another consideration is if or when to return. With a bit more foresight, and based on an already formulated concept about animal behaviors and knowing a variety of the habits of a specific local species, or based on past experiences with local plants and animals that know and decide they would return. At the next visit, they could witness the tracks of what looks to be a completely new animal, one with large footprints with the impression of 3 toes or claw-like markings. This would seem to suggest that this animal could stand upright and therefore must be some type of predator, and some have deduced that it would have some measure of intelligence and slash or predation abilities that have some parallels to them and are quite dangerous. Maybe an intuition would prompt further thoughts. Such thoughts or intuitions will go from personal or collective recognition of past experience in other circumstances, and while this would vary in each individual, the core idea is it could lead to a lot of errant thoughts, which is typical as people begin to introduce novelty ideas. Not that anything wrong here, as they should be welcome, since they are in essence the start of new ideas for which the future might hold some real and great discoveries. So the final answer is not possible, even for the most brilliant and imaginative people we may know.
Alright, we're gonna stop there because it's long. So, that was nice and poetic.